I'm about to head out for the gym, but I thought I would take a quick second, or 20 minutes, I guess, to record a video for you guys. And we're going to talk about cinnamon. I just had a stroke. I almost just said cinnamon enema. About narrative dissonance. Or synonarrative dissonance. Cinnamon. I'm leaving that in. All right. So if you've ever heard of the term ludonarrative dissonance, it's oh my God, I am doing great today. It is a term coined in 2007 by a guy named Clint Hawking when he was talking about a review for BioShock. It's a video game. And ludonarrative dissonance, way overused now. Anytime you hear people say it, typically they're trying to be smarter than they really are, or they're just finding any reason to hate on a game. I mean, it's just blown out of proportion. But ludonarrative dissonance is when the gameplay does not complement or match up to what the story is trying to tell the player, or what the story is trying to convey. And one great example of this is in Grand Theft Auto 4. In Grand Theft Auto 4, right, you're playing, for those of you who know, you play as Nico Bellic, and comes to America. He's living in the city, and he is a veteran of a civil war from his home country, PTSD, and he hates violence now. He wants nothing to do with it. He just wants to live a quiet, peaceful, normal life. That's the story they tell you with every cutscene, all these things that you learn about the character through the storyline is what I just said. Now, the gameplay, you are a psychopathic, murdering terrorist, pretty much, running around the city, blowing everything up, killing swarms of cops, just doing whatever you want to do, running over pedestrians, firing RPGs into a chicken shop, right? You do whatever you want in the game. So that, the ludonarrative is dissonant. An example of ludonarrative harmony is a game called Far Cry 3. In Far Cry, you start off the game as the character, and you and your friends are on vacation on the island. And when, the events unfold, for those of you who know, you all get kidnapped, and your older brother's there with you, your girlfriend, your friends. You guys get kidnapped. Your older brother tries to fight back. He gets killed right in front of you, and your character is too scared to do anything about it. He just submits. He's way too scared and has no gut in him to try to fight back to protect his brother or even his friends or himself. As the game continues and he kills his first person, as you level up, for those of you who have played, you get those tattoos that give you more strength and techniques and takedowns and things like that. As the game progresses, he gets better and better at killing enemies and completing missions and trying to save your friends who are all kidnapped still. But the storyline portrays your character slowly actually devolving psychologically to the point that at the beginning he was terrified of the concept, but now he likes it. And for those of you who have played, you get to that one point where you save your friends and they're all about to get on a boat to leave, and you go, I'm staying. I got business to do. I got things to handle. And they're like, bro, what? We're free. And he's like, nah, I got people to go kill. I got things I got to do. I like this. I'm going to go fire an RPG at an alligator, skin it, and then go kill an outpost full of enemies. So that's ludonarrative harmony. Now, how does that convey into cinema? See, it's different because there's no gameplay in a movie. So whereas a video game can tell you a story, but then the gameplay can either match up to the story or not. A movie, most people think it's just the movie. It's just the story of the movie. But no. Before I dive into the point, I want to bring up, there's a statue this is a small tangent, there's a statue in Istanbul of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. The story of the statue is shown in the physical appearance of the statue. On his cuirass, however you pronounce that word, I've definitely just butchered that, unless I didn't, is lower in the abdomen is the story of Romulus and Remus, which is very Roman. Now above that, at the chest, is Athena standing over Romulus and Remus, which is very Greek. I'm not here to give a history lesson, because then I'll get into a whole tangent about the downfall of Rome and culture sway and all that, and like the Hellenistic side of Rome. But my point is, the story of the statue is in the presentation of the statue, just like in a movie. But there are other things that you can read into to learn more of the story of the statue, just like with a movie. I am going to pick a very, very low-hanging fruit for this video, just to kind of keep this simple before I head out for MMA. Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, is cinenarratively dissident. It tells the story of Rey becoming the most powerful Jedi ever and taking down the resurrected Palpatine, but it does nothing to show or lead the audience to that point. It just does it and just tells you that that's fact. So whereas a video game, the ludonarrative being dissident is the story tells you one thing, the gameplay tells you another. In cinema, the cinenarrative being dissident is the movies telling you one thing, but showing you something else, or not showing what it's trying to tell you. And if you've ever kind of heard anything about writing in general for movies and scripts, and I mean even just a lot of other things, there's always the idea of show, don't tell. Now, realistically, you need a balance. There are some things that you can tell. There are some things that, you should tell. But for the most part, you want to show, don't tell. You want the audience to see, gather that information themselves, put the pieces together, set up the puzzle, so when the ending comes around, they have the full picture. Whereas the Star Wars sequel trilogy doesn't do that. Granted, a large part of that, I don't know what sound just came out of my mouth. I'm having strokes left and right here. A large part of that is due to the fact that there's a lot of plot holes. A lot of the writing just didn't make sense in general, but I'm not here to critique that movie or the sequel trilogy as a whole, because that would take hours. I'm just talking about the point of the cinenarrative being dissident. It's an easy example to pick. What kind of movies have harmony with their cinenarrative? Countless movies. Many, many movies. I probably should have thought of one off the top of my head before I started recording. I sort of just had the idea to talk about this, sat down, turned the camera on, started ranting, having strokes. But I think one example would be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It tells the story of Leonardo DiCaprio's character being at the end of his acting career. He was big in the 50s, but now he's progressing through the 60s towards the 70s, and his career started to stagnate, started to get harder to get jobs and find work. And he's starting to get to a point where he feels washed up, or kind of starts being treated like he's washing up. And then what it shows as well is a guy who can't drive himself anywhere because he crashed his car when he was drunk, DUIs. So his stunt double has to drive him around. when he shows up to different sets and stuff, he's kind of a mess. He's neurotic. He's extremely anxious. He's being ripped apart by all this stress of, he used to be a TV star, and now he's struggling to keep that level of fame, right? And it does all these things. There's the whole scene where he gets back in his trailer and he starts kicking around, and the whole that scene. If you've ever seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, I just look psychotic. But it tells you one thing and shows you things to match it. That's how the cinema narrative would be in harmony. Now, I don't know if I really have to keep talking, because I think the point kind of makes itself. It's a very straightforward concept. But I do think it's interesting to kind of think about what kind of movies have that, where what they want you to take away and what they want to tell you doesn't match up to what they're actually showing you. Which is becoming increasingly common in Hollywood, because they're starting to do a lot more of tell, don't show, which is awful. Is just because it also treats the audience like children. Right? I mean, House of the Dragon is airing now, and that's a perfect example of how well you can show and not tell things. Some of the most obvious things is King Viserys' health. Extremely notable. But before his skin started to change color and it got progressively worse a lot faster, he had the hairline receding. It's easy to miss, but there's a scene where he's talking to Alicent in the room with his whole sculpture of old Valyria, and he puts his hand up and he's missing 2 fingers. And they don't tell you that he had to have fingers amputated, right? In previous episodes, the maesters were like, "Oh, we'll put your hand in maggots. They'll eat the dead flesh. You'll be good." And next thing we know, next time we see him, you can tell he's missing 2 fingers, and it kind of goes like that. And to kind of drive that point home, a later episode when he goes to visit Corlys and Rhaenys, she goes to hold his hands and he winces, and she looks down and notices, "Oh, dude, you're missing fingers. What's going on here?" Right? And with every character, they have things that they show and don't tell, but that's how you treat an audience like an adult, is knowing that people are smart enough to pick up on these things. And if they don't notice it, when people talk about it online and stuff, like the word will spread, especially with something that people actually enjoy and are being addicted to with a show as good as that. And also, like, people will rewatch. Like, if it's a good enough show, you're usually going to get somebody who watches it and then they're like, "Oh my god, like, I want to show my parents this, like, I'm going to hang out with them, show them this," and then watch it again. And on the second run through, you're like, "Oh, I didn't even notice that first," all that. Point is, there is an actual thing for ludonarrative from video games to be applied to storytelling in cinema. And yeah, pretty simple concept. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.